This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is... I love London. London has always given me success and fortune and greatness, and I plan on being buried in that city.
You announced that you're running for mayor of London.
Yes.
Brian Rose is back!
Hi, I'm Brian Rose, and I plan to be your next mayor of London.
I think you'll get it. Can you be a prime minister in UK?
I can be anything. Although when people hear my accent, they say, how can an American be that? I'm like, I'm a British citizen. I can show you my passport.
There you go.
So there's proof is in the pudding. I never told anyone about this darkness. I didn't tell my wife. I didn't tell my kids. I didn't tell my best friends. And I thought it was just going to be a dark period in my life that I would never, ever address again. Tears start coming down my face, and my camera crew's all there, and they're like, what the fuck? We've never seen Brian cry, ever. We are here to serve. We are all one. And I learned this after 13 years of speaking to over 1,000 people on London Real.
So without further ado, I'm Radin Jerome. Wherever you are in your life, or wherever you're going, whether financially, spiritually, or for your health, I hope you're on your way. Now let's get into it.
Brian Rose. What a pleasure.
Pleasure to be here, brother.
What a pleasure.
Thank you for the ride, man.
What a pleasure this is for us. Taking you to the airport, you don't have much time. I mean, we thought, listen, kill two birds with one stone.
Look, it's a beautiful thing. It's a great excuse to roll to the airport in style.
Yep.
And do, some media. And like I was telling you, I always have a special place in my heart for anybody who's trying to broadcast themselves, man.
I appreciate you.
Yeah.
I appreciate you. I know you started a long time ago. You're one of the OGs in the game. You and... I would say you're the London Joe Rogan.
That's a huge compliment. I always wanted to be. Joe Rogan inspired me to start the show. I used to watch Joe before people knew who he was, because I trained Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I watched UFC. So I knew about Joe. I knew he had a show. I used to watch him before he was on YouTube.
Yeah.
When he was on Vimeo. And those shows changed my life. And I was a banker. I was making a ton of money, but I was extremely unhappy. And at night I would go home with all of my stuff and basically drink myself to death. And I thought, what? I need to change things up. And so I literally quit my job, and I was trying to be maybe the Joe Rogan of London. And that was 13 years ago.
Wow. You have been on Joe Rogan before Joe Rogan was Joe Rogan, when he had in his old studio in LA, and he had the laptop in front of him.
Yeah.
He doesn't have any of that anymore, but that's how old you go with him.
Yeah, we were on episode 271 of the Joe Rogan Experience.
Wow.
It was in 2013.
Wow.
And that was a huge moment for us, because here we are in London doing a podcast. Nobody knows what a podcast is in London. Barely know what it is in America. Now, look, we were always on video. I never really considered my show a podcast. I think it's more than that. But when Joe started noticing us and commenting on our posts, I couldn't believe it. I just thought somebody was punking us or pranking us. The fact that Joe would actually be listening to what we were doing, and then when he invited us on the show, it was a massive moment. And when we went there, it was in the Ice House Comedy Club. He had a room in the back, all these psychedelic colors. Red Band was still there. And I remember we flew to LA and recorded that episode, and it was a huge moment, because it was like recognition from who I knew at the time was the OG. It took the world another decade to realize he was the OG, that we were like on the right path.
Yeah.
But I also said at the time, I said, just being on Joe Rogan doesn't make you. I remember, saying to someone, when you get back to London, we're gonna have to go right back to work and keep working. But it was a big moment. Joe's such a warm guy, gave me a big hug when we came in, passed me the joint. I refused.
Why?
Just because I don't do well with weed.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I also figured I got 3 hours to debut to the world. I better at least try to represent who I am.
Okay, yeah.
And we had a show, conversation. I didn't think it was the greatest show, but we did it, and then we kept going. So that was a big moment. Big moment.
Awesome. I used to, in Australia, when I used to go to business meetings, I used to get high, smoke a little weed before business meetings, and my business partner would look in my eyes going, you going to this business meeting like this? And I said to him, I do my best meetings like this. So I think if I could, thank God it's illegal in Dubai, that I can't get it, I can't get my hands on it, but I think if I could, I'd be doing it every day before a podcast. I'd probably be doing it on the podcast.
Some people can function on that. I know Joe can train on it and things like that. So look, God bless, man, to each his own. For me, I've been super sober for like 6 years now, and I really love it. So that's just me. But like I said, to each his own.
Listen, you got a really fit, for your age, you got a ripped body. What do you do for fitness, by the way?
You know, for me, my physical training is really about my mental state.
Sure.
And so for me, in order to be a calm and cool and collected father, leader, creator, broadcaster, investor, whatever I have to do, I've got to get past the natural, honestly, aggression I'll wake up with, or maybe the negativity I wake up with. And everyone has their process. For me, if I don't get in some hard anaerobic cardio, I'm just not the person I want to be. So for me, my daily training, it's about the mental state. And yeah, I mean, the physical body kind of comes with that. But I'm dancing, boxing, running, lifting, you know, swimming.
Yeah.
I embrace all of these physical movement patterns, and I love it, and it keeps my brain fresh. So that's probably the result of that. But I don't train necessarily just for the body. I train really for the brain.
Yeah, of course. I only train at gyms in Australia, and we did a survey, and everyone said that to empty this. It's not to, and there's a direct correlation between a healthy body and a healthy brain. Andrew Tate says, "You want to kill yourself? Okay, go get a six-pack first. Then, if you want to kill yourself, I'll help you." But get a six-pack first.
Yeah, that's right. Well said, right? Right. If you have a six-pack, you're probably not going to be in that depressive state where you're going to want to go do something bad to yourself. Look, we grew up in this world where we separate these two areas of our body. In the brain, it's all about, you know, the intellectual. I'm going to, you know, do everything here and process, and that's what most of us are paid for. But this is all one unit, you know, including our heart, and you can go deep into all of that. So it's one unit, treated as such. It's probably the single most important thing that people don't do in this world is do physical activity. It can cure so many ails, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Okay, so you've podcasted with so many people. You've interviewed so many people. I don't even know if I can say podcasted. You've interviewed so many people, right? Yeah. Tell me some standouts. Tell me some standouts. I mean, you come from a banking background. You're in Wall Street. You're in New York. Does things like the Jordan Belfort character really stand out to you? Because obviously he's from that world.
Yeah, look, people always say, who's your favorite guest on London Real?
Yeah.
I always say it's like my children. I don't have favorites, you know.
Okay.
But of course we know that's not true, right? And so I have a few favorites. You know, we've actually made 6 documentary feature films, and a lot of those feature the guests that impacted my life in a massive way. And so I made those guests about, first, Dorian Yates, 6-time Mr. Olympia, Ido Portal, a movement guy out of Israel. Then I had Dan Pena, the $1 trillion man, John Joseph in my quest for an Ironman race, and then of course David Icke was featured in our latest one. So those are the names that had big impacts, but yeah, I mean, so many. I've had over 1,000 conversations with some of the most fascinating people in the world. You can call them interviews, but I'd like to believe that we create an experience in 6-camera high definition, unscripted, unedited, uncensored, where I can capture the essence of who that person is. If they die the next day, God forbid, people could watch back their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren, and know exactly who they are. Up to 95, 98% once they have an episode of London Real. I think people are going to be watching my shows 1,000 years from now. I truly believe that. So I try to capture that. And yeah, there's always standouts. Jordan Belfort's amazing. He's been on the show many times. I just had him on. He's got a new book out. And he's a really interesting guy. I worked on Wall Street for a long time. His Wolf of Wall Street is a different Wall Street than mine. You know, he was on Long Island, you know, doing penny stocks and boiler room stuff. I was literally on Wall Street doing derivatives trading with like the Goldman Sachs and JP Morgans. So a different experience, but I respect Jordan a lot for what he's gone through. And look, one of my favorite guests on my show is Ice-T. He's an old school OG hip hop rapper. Yeah. And he always says it's not about the come up, it's about the come back. You know, it's like when I watch a UFC fighter take a loss, I'm always watching, can they come back from that loss? Can they become better? Because if you can't, maybe you never were a winner. Maybe you just had a series of fortunes. And so, like myself and Jordan was in prison. He lost everything. And he decided to start writing. He couldn't write. He taught himself to write. And he made this massive comeback. And that's who I respect. I respect the people that come back from losing everything. That shows me resilience. That shows me character. So I like people like Jordan. And to be honest, probably every single guest on London Real has had a massive setback and come back from that, including myself. So that's what stands out to me. That's where wisdom comes from. And that's why I think inspires all of us when we watch these people. We're like, wow, they came back from that. That means I can come back from anything. So yeah, Jordan's up there for sure.
Yeah. I can feel that energy in you, by the way, that Wall Street. If I had to say one word, it's tenacity. It's you just don't give up. You're like, okay, I'm going to come back.
You know, I think it was Grant Cardone that told me, he said, look, if you don't give up, then you will always win. It's just true.
Sure.
You know, and Jocko Willink, a U.S. Navy SEAL, you know, he's got these amazing concepts like discipline equals freedom and extreme ownership. And he always says, you know, if you just never quit, you know, if you can say, he always has this term where he says good. Anything bad that happens to you, he says good. There's a great video online about it. And he says, if you can say the word good, if you can just even whisper that, that means you got some fight left in you.
Yeah.
So what you do is you recalibrate, you reload, you re-engage, and you go back out on the attack. Man, that's life.
Yeah.
I'm going to be doing that until I'm 80, 90, 100.
Yeah.
There's going to be always battles out there. So that's what people always need to remember.
We actually had a situation like this just yesterday. I was really excited to podcast with you today, and I was at the bank and I saw my friend who's a DJ. He's like, what are you doing right now? We're going on a boat. Do you want to come? Let's go on the boat. If I didn't go on that boat, I would have gone home. On the way to the boat, the car breaks down. We end up jumping in a taxi, going on the boat, sending this car to the mechanic. The mechanic says, I can't get this sorted before your podcast tomorrow at 11:30. I said to him, I'm going to buy everybody lunch. I caught up this taxi boat from the yacht to the shore, ordered dinner for everyone. I went to the garage and sat there with them. And I was there until 1 a.m. and I drove this car back home, sent Shaq home, and I said, I cannot. And it's just a fight of tenacity. And if you're not there, they're going to go home. Ordering them food, standing above him, because I said, listen, he's going to the airport. I need to get this.
Yeah, much respect, man. Much respect. And that's the thing. A lot of people don't see the behind-the-scenes pieces that make somebody great. And again, I call it media bias, and I still do it too, even though I'm in the media business. You see someone and you're like, that pop singer got lucky. That guy got lucky. Oh man, he's not there. But look, if you're seeing them, most likely they have 100 stories like the one you just said.
Yeah.
That time they had to push through, that time they had to get it done. Otherwise, they wouldn't be where they're at. So you should always respect people for where they are and always understand you have a media bias. I mean, I have people on my show all the time, and at the end of the show, I'm like, wow, you're amazing. I thought you were a total jerk, you know? And then now when you sit there, I'm like, wow, Grant Cardone, perfect example. The day before he's about to come on the show, I said to my team, why the hell are we having this guy? He sits on top of his plane. He shoots out money out of a gun. This guy looks like a total shallow jerk off. He sits in my chair. 12 minutes in, he's talking about how he was 25 years old, addicted to meth, just gotten beat up, 24 stitches in his face. And his mom said, you're a loser. I never want to see you again in my life. This guy getting real with me on the show. And I'm just like, wow. So nobody is what you think they are. Everyone has a deep story, and that's probably how they got to where they are. So yeah, respect to you, man. Anybody who can pull something off consistently over time has gone through a lot of heartache to make it happen. You just don't see it. So nice work. Nice work on making this happen, man.
I wasn't going to tell you that, but now we're talking about this.
It's good, yeah.
I thought I'd mention it. You know, something that I love about, the reason why I said interviews more than podcasts, because I feel like podcasts are is more of an open discussion. But with you, the thing that I really like about your style and really respect about your style is you sit there stealth, quiet, and you almost squeeze the juice. You squeeze everything out of them from that question that you asked. And then you wait, and then you go in for the next, or follow up, or something like that. Is this something you had to develop, or is this just something natural to you?
You know, it's interesting. A lot of people start shows and they think, well, what am I going to do? Interview Jordan Peterson for the 1,000th time, or interview this guy for the 500th time. I got nothing to add with my new podcast. That's not true. And that's why even if I wanted to compete with Joe Rogan, I could never compete with Joe Rogan, because we're two very different individuals, and our energy and our styles are going to bring out two very different conversations. So look, me, I'm actually introverted by nature. Maybe you are too. A lot of people on YouTube are actually introverted. They find this as a means of somehow connecting to people. And so for me, if you watch my first 2 years of London Real, I didn't say a word about me. Like, never shared anything, any perspectives. I just, you know, sat there and tried to elicit as much from the guest. For me, London Real is about the guests. I am trying to get the best version of them, or the truest version of them, to the world, for the world to see and judge who they are.
Sure. It's
not about me. It's just frankly not about me. And unfortunately, in the media we see today, and for the last 10 or 15 years, people's shows are all about them. You know, how much can I yell? How much can I proselytize? How much can I lecture the world? For me, it was always quite the opposite. I always joke, if I do my job right, all I have to do is sit there and shut up, right? But I think, I think that's my style.
Yeah.
And again, the problem is if you're trying to build a personal brand, which I never was trying to, it'll take longer. But I'm trying to create this piece of content. I'm trying to create the perfect conversation. And people don't understand, it's unedited, unscripted. I've never met the guest. The guest is nervous, they're stressed out, they had a bad taxi ride. They get to my studio, it's my job, extreme ownership, not their job, to get them in that chair and to open up their story like the most beautiful Hollywood film, the most beautiful story arc, the hero's journey, where you're uplifted, you laugh, you cry, you go to the dark depths, and then they come back for the victory. That's what I'm trying to craft in a conversation, to where it's almost like watching a movie when you listen to that show. That's what I'm looking to do. And so my style is to allow it to happen. And I usually lock myself in a room, my studio, there's no one else in the room, and we're literally in a box, and the lights are on, and we're looking at each other, and like something's happening here. And I've had guests like David Icke say the energy's building up in the room, and we're capturing a moment. It's like souls are connecting. We're creating something greater than the two of us, and people can feel it out there. I know that our episodes during lockdown, people felt something, and we're creating something really special in there that will always be there for time forever. And so I'm trying to create that, and it happens when I go deep. People say, how did you get Eddie Hall, world's strongest man, fucking behemoth of a man, to cry on your episode? I've gotten, Nigel Benn, the Dark Destroyer, one of the scariest boxers in the 90s and 2000s, to cry on my show. He cried for 2 minutes. I had to reach over and touch his knee because he was crying. How do you get those guys to do that? Because I'm there for 2 hours, because I never break eye contact with them, because I'm setting up that safe atmosphere. Maybe they've already watched one of my documentary movies where I talked about my heroin overdose, where I talk about my ayahuasca experience, where I talk about my divorce when I was 7 years old. Maybe they know it's a space where they can say that, and maybe they're expected to go that deep. And so I'm trying to create that space to where we can get somewhere that's real. When you see Eddie Hall cry because he promised his grandma on her deathbed that he would become the world's strongest man, and she died in front of him, and he said to me, you know what I did, Brian? I went to the gym.
Wow.
Like that, and he's crying, and he's massive. That is the moment. Like, that's the moment that will inspire thousands, who knows, maybe millions of people to do something with their lives. So that's what I'm trying to create. But sometimes you'll just see me zipping my mouth. Also, the more you shut up, the more people talk.
Exactly.
But I'm not actually intentionally doing that.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to set the space to allow them to show me something.
Sure.
And sometimes it works well, sometimes it doesn't.
No, honestly, and if it doesn't, we don't air it.
We always air it. It's just, some rise to the top. It's like the Beatles, man. They have hits.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of songs the Beatles made that suck that you never listen to.
Yeah.
With London Real, we've done 1,000 episodes. You probably know 100 guests, and there's 900 that no one watched too much, but maybe they inspired someone.
Sure.
So again, the good stuff rises to the top.
Of course, but that's the nature of the game. You got to do it. You can't just do the best ones. You mentioned your divorce. You mentioned the heroin overdose, all that stuff. What is the hardest thing to this day that you've been through?
Hardest thing I've been through. In 2018, I had a guest on the show, and his name was John Joseph, and he was the lead singer of a hardcore punk band called the Cro-Mags.
Okay.
And he's this hardcore frontman for a rock band, has a history of drug addiction and sexual abuse when he was a kid at a foster home. And he came on my show in 18, and we had an amazing conversation in London. And afterwards, he's like, you know what, Brian, there's something going on with you, and this is not finished. And so he called me from New York a few weeks later and said, Brian, I want you to run an Ironman race with me. And I was like, Ironman race? What are you talking about? I got 2 young kids. I'm 47 years old. I've never done anything in distance. I've never swam any distance, ran any distance, biked any distance. He's like, come on, Brian. He's like, you need to do this. You come to New York and we're going to do this together. So, look, needless to say, I said yes. I went to New York. I started training for this race. And when I was in New York City, I had all these flashbacks to some of the worst moments in my life. I spent 4 years in New York City. I was in my 20s. And they were hard, because New York City, man, as John says it's the ultimate bullshit detector.
Tough city.
It brings out the good and the bad, and it's tough, man. It's tough, and it'll burn you up if you can't survive. And look, I'm in my 20s. I don't know who is equipped to survive in that city. And I went to some dark places. I got addicted to drugs, and I actually overdosed on heroin in that city. In 2001, the same time, my best friend from MIT fired me, my girlfriend of 4 years lefty, and some guys decided to crash some buildings at the World Trade Center right next door to my neighborhood. So it was a bad year, and I ended that year by getting the hell out of the city and moving to London in '02, and I tried to rebuild myself. I never told anyone about this darkness. I didn't tell my wife, I didn't tell my kids, I didn't tell my best friends. 2 people in New York knew about it, and I thought it was just gonna be a dark period in my life that I would never ever address again. And yet when I'm training with John for this Ironman race, 16 years, I'm walking around New York City, I'm having these flashbacks, and he puts me on this stationary bike and he pushes my heart rate to the maximum for like 6 minutes, and he's yelling at me, and tears start coming down my face, and my camera crew's all there, and they're like, what the fuck? We've never seen Brian cry, ever. What's going on here? And I was just breaking down, reliving all of this failure, because New York City for me reminded me of failure, like all the things I did and the things I ruined. And I ended up having a chat with John that night on the sofa of our Airbnb, and I said for the first time what happened to me, the overdose. And I felt comfortable because John had talked about sexual abuse. I mean, if you've got a guy that's real, I could be real. And I talked about it for the first time. And, you know, I later played that in front of my wife at the time and in front of my daughter, and I ended up publishing it for the whole world. And it was the hardest thing to do because it was the worst time of my life. And then to confessing it was the hardest thing to do. And I remember having to hit send on an email where I said, my heroin overdose was my headline, subject line on a Saturday. And I thought, man, this could all be over. And I hit send. And it was amazing because all I got back was love. You know, people said, that happened to me, that happened to my brother, that happened to my uncle. How could that happen to you, Brian? You're the Wall Street guy, you're the MIT guy, you're the successful guy. It's like, look, you know, drugs, they don't discriminate, man. They come after all y'all.
Everyone.
And they'll come after you and they'll ruin your life. And so that was probably the hardest thing that ever happened to me. I almost died. I woke up in the hospital. And also the hardest thing to come clean about. But now it's one of my most proudest moments. And here's the thing. Something I thought was so dark that would only be bad turned out to be one of the most beautiful sources of light for so many people. And so I always encourage people, go into the darkness. If you have a show like this, get vulnerable and tell them the real story, because people are so inspired by that. And everyone has darkness. Everyone has those bad times. And so if they can learn from that, you know, they can come back. So for me, that was one of the hardest things. Honestly, telling my stepdaughter was one of the hardest things. She was like 10 at the time, or 12, and I had to sit her down and say, look, this is what happened to Daddy, and it was just really hard, but, you know, necessary. So yeah, that's probably one of the biggest things. And because of London Real, I could finally put it out there, and it's in a movie I made called Iron Mind. It's all about the Ironman race and the comeback from, you know, these really hard times.
When I spoke to my ex-girlfriend, I said, what attracted you to me initially? She said it was your confidence. And I think my confidence comes from accepting my darkness.
There you go.
Right? When you accept that you've been through it, what are you going to do to me? You know, I accept it, I wear it, right?
Yeah.
I've been there. And when you wear it, then it kind of disarms anyone else, and you don't have to hold it in the shadows anymore.
I'm reminded of a line from the movie Scarface, you know, when they got Tony Montana and he's in immigration, he just came across from Cuba. And he says, there's nothing you can do to me that Castro has not already done, right? And so look, so when he got there, and like he had seen all the bad stuff, he had made it through, and it was true. When there's you know, when there's nothing that life can do to you that it has already been done, you're like, okay, bring it.
What else?
I've been through that. I've come back from the dead, and I'm still here, motherfucker. What you got? You got nothing on me. Nothing on me. And again, sometimes when I'm training really hard, you'll hear me. I'll be shouting that out. You got nothing. What else you got? Is that it? Is that it? Let's go. So like, you're right. If you could just overcome Nietzsche, that which does not kill me makes me stronger. It is true. So use it as a tool.
We should have done a gym session together before you left, by the way. Okay, I'm hyped up right now. I want to go to the gym right now, actually, with you.
Me too, man. Me too.
You know? If you like this video, consider subscribing. We do weekly podcasts with experts in every industry to help you find direction and guide you on your way. Now let's get back into it. You announced that you're running for Mayor of London.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I think you'll get it. The influence and the audience that you already have, and the shit job that Sadiq Khan is already doing, that's helping you, assisting you, pretty much is a layup for you right now at this point. London, I lived in New York, I told you this, and I went to London for a couple of weeks. I see a lot of similarities with London and New York. Do you as well?
I do. Look, I moved from New York City to London permanently in '02 when I had to get the hell out of Dodge, and I rebuilt my life, rebuilt my career, and I love London. You know, London has always given me success and fortune and greatness, whereas in New York City, it literally nearly killed me.
Yeah.
And so I love that city. I'm a citizen. My children were born there, and I plan on being buried in that city. So I've always loved London. You know, and back in 2020, you know, when they locked that city down and we were putting out episodes that ended up getting us censored, and we could talk about that later, I was so angry at what the mayor at the time, Sadiq Khan, did, because he shut down the city, and I would take taxis home at night, and these black cab drivers who are the ultimate entrepreneurs. I love black cabs in London. They're like your own personal limousine. These guys were on the edge of suicide. They were on depression. They're like, you're my only job, Brian. I'm at home. I bought a brand new taxi for £65,000 because the mayor told me to, and now he won't let me work. And I had friends with businesses and restaurants and wine bars, and they were just dying. And at the same time, I was interviewing people like Dr. Martin Kulldorff and Jay Bhattacharya of Stanford that said, this is not the solution, locking everybody down. This is wrong. And so I got so angry, I looked at the city and I said, every decision Sadiq Khan is making is actually trying to ruin this city. And I thought, how can this happen? And I looked at the conservative candidate, Sean Bailey, at the time, and I thought he was even more of a joke. And I thought, to hell with this, I'm running for mayor of London. And so we spent 7 months, millions of pounds, and my face was on all the billboards. I had a battle bus with my face on it. We drove 5,000 miles through every single borough of London twice. The police pulled me over, tried to stop me from campaigning because we were in lockdown, which was ridiculous. And we ran. And I realized one thing. It's really hard to beat the two-party system. You've got Coke and Pepsi, you've got Labor and Conservative, you got Democrat, Republican, and my good friend Bobby Kennedy is trying to do that in America right now, running as an independent. The problem is the whole system, including the media, and the media is all wrapped up in a complicit system with politics. They don't really want the independent candidates, but I've watched my city now, 3 years later, go further and further down into the ground. You know, stabbings and killings on the streets of one of the most beautiful cities in the world are at nightmare proportions. They no longer allow our freedoms, our freedom of speech, our financial freedoms, and again, transport, housing, business. You know, London's a war zone. People in Dubai laugh out loud about London. You know, whereas 20, 30 years ago, the UK was revered in this region. Now it's not. People are exiting and moving to places like Dubai where things are safe and taxes are low and services are there. And so I think entire Western governments have to stop walking around with their, you know, with their egos and this delusion of superiority, when in fact their democratic, fair system is broken. And so I want to go back and honestly take everything I've learned in the last 7 weeks here and try to get it back into that city and take it forward for the next 4 years. So that's the plan. The current mayor is Sadiq Khan. Conservatives have put up another joke of a candidate. Our policies are strong. I love that city, and I'll dedicate the next 4 years of my life to making it better. And this is our second time around. People have been begging me to run for 3 years, but I don't really understand it. But that man has a lock on that city, but I think the truth will come out.
I think so too, and I think, you know, you being here is almost like an educational trip just to see how Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum runs this city so well. And there's so many things you can take from this, and it's not just one secret sauce here, there's many things. But I remember Sadiq Khan during COVID, he just fumbled through that so bad, and has made the city go down so much further after that. He was not a decision maker. He can't make decisions on his own, not only on his own, but even in a quick manner. I guess that's kind of what Dubai does really well here. Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum makes a decision straight away, right? Actions, and I think that's something that you would do, bringing that culture there.
This is such a fascinating place because His Highness, as you mentioned, has this long-term vision, you know, the 2030, the 32, the 2070 plan. And not only it's him, but it's his family. Like, their entire reputation is on the line. And they have this long-term vision. You know, when I was running for mayor, I had people from the House of Lords, you know, people from the Metropolitan Police, all working with me on my policies. I published a 65-page manifesto, and we had plans for housing, for transportation, for the police force, for crime, for business. And at one point I looked at all these people on Zoom and I said, you know what, if we do what we want to do, the next mayor is going to take credit for what we do. I said, is everyone okay with that? They said, yeah, we're with you, Brian. And that's the problem with this broken system, is that no one wants to do anything because it's a 4-year term and another 4-year term, maybe if you're lucky. Same with America. I'm calling out the United States as well. And so no one ever does anything for the long term. If you want to solve problems like transport and housing, folks, you need a 20, 30-year vision. Look at Dubai. You need an unwavering vision, maybe for 50 years. And so you look at this thing in London, people are electing themselves for their personal benefit, for their personal reputations, usually to line their pockets through government or to try to work for the next office. Sadiq just wants to be prime minister. Look at what Boris did. He was mayor and he was prime minister. So they don't care about making these intelligent long-term decisions. And Dubai is the perfect example of someone doing the opposite. And people don't understand this city. You would think a monarchy here wouldn't care about feedback. Are you kidding me? Everything that happens in this city, including when you land on Emirates Airline, how did we do? How was the feedback? They move in very fast proportion. He calls himself the Sheikh's CEO, okay? He gets rid of the bottom 20% of performers. He runs this place like a business. It is a business, and it's a beautiful thing to behold. And again, it's not what people think it is. They think it doesn't have this, it doesn't have that. Oh, Brian, you're in Dubai, you don't have freedom of speech. I'm like, oh, really? Like I do on YouTube? Oh, I don't. Like I do because of Ofcom in the UK that told me I couldn't ask questions about lockdowns, about masks, about social distancing, regardless of the fact that I was right about all those things. That doesn't matter. We should have an open and honest dialogue to where we can find it, because the best ideas always win. And so these illusions of freedoms in the West, they need to be questioned right now. And this place is a shining example. And that's why, honestly, the last 7 weeks have been the perfect place for me to be, to get London back on track, because I've just literally absorbed all the greatness of His Highness's vision for this place, and it's incredible.
When you have leaders, especially in UK, that can't make decisions and just hand everything back to the people, you decide, then you get things like Brexit, which was a big mistake. You look at the unemployment's gone through the roof, the economy's shrunk, big mistake. Some people should not be let making decisions for the country. You shouldn't let the people vote. They don't know what they want sometimes. So that's why, and I think why I really like you for this role in politics is because you're weathered. You've been from being addicted to being on Wall Street making millions of dollars. You've been through all the ranks in the social economical world of things. So you know exactly, you can meet every
genre of person in the streets. Like, that's who I go out and talk to, really.
Every category of people, from the millionaires making millions a week to the drug addicts, to seeing what they need, right? What do they need to be able to get off the streets, to not be homeless, to not be addicted, to not sell drugs, to not do violence. So that's why I think for you, it's just such a perfect case study for this. I feel like your whole life has been to get you ready for this.
Look, I'm not doing this because I want to do it. I'm doing this because I have to do it. And that's the thing. I mean, honestly, the pay is garbage. You know, the hate is real. And it's probably one of the hardest things I'll ever do. But I owe it to the city that really gave me everything. And that's why I want to do it. And look, I went to every single borough in London. I hang out on the streets. One of my most popular boroughs is Tower Hamlets. You're like, this is one of the most urban, downtrodden, problemed boroughs in London, and yet when I go there, all the kids on the street, they love me because they see me doing real things, putting out inspirational messages, staying fit. I go to the boxing clubs there. I go and I see what's going on. I go talk to the knife crime centers and what they're doing with the youth. I can talk to anybody in that city, and I really care about what goes on there. The problem is trying to get through this brainwashing that the two-party system does. Unfortunately, many people, 3 days before the election on May 1st or April 30th, they'll go and say, oh, I need to vote. What party has my interests? And Labor says, we have your interests, we're looking out for the worker. They're not actually. And so my father voted Labor, I'm gonna go vote. And then they don't think about it twice. I'm asking everybody out there just to really zoom out and look at who is making decisions in your best interest. And that's what I wanna do. So we're gonna get out there. We got some amazing policies. I can't wait to meet the people in the streets. This time we won't be locked down. We'll have a battle bus. We'll be out there. So it's going to be epic. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing it. Can you be a prime minister in UK?
I'm a British citizen, and so I can be anything, really. Yeah, mayor, minister, which then you could be prime minister as well. A lot of people don't realize both Winston Churchill and Boris Johnson are both also Americans.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. Winston Churchill and Boris Johnson was born in America, Winston Churchill as well. So people don't realize there's a long history. Although when people hear my accent, they say, how can an American be that? I'm like, I'm a British citizen. I can show you my passport. It's the same color as your passport, which gives me all of the same rights in your country.
There you go.
So there's proof is in the pudding.
There you go.
And so I always try to remind that of people. And there's a rich history in Britain of people from all nations coming. And that's a thing that Britain forgets sometimes. It is a country of immigrants. I talked when I was running for mayor 3 years ago. I said, raise your hand if your parents came from another country, maybe about 10%. Raise your hands if your grandparents came from another country, 40%. What about your great-grandparents? Pretty much every hand goes up. Look at the royal family. They're not British. They're German and Greek and all these other things.
Yeah.
So like Britain soon forgets that it all comes from other nations. And so as an American, or born in America, and now I'm also British, I think I'm going to bring just the best ideas. And that's why coming to a place like Dubai is just as important. I have my golden visa here. I was blessed to get that from an incredible member of government here. And again, I think that brings more ammunition to the table, the more experience I can have.
Absolutely. Is that the goal? Is being Prime Minister the goal at the end?
No, not really.
No.
What I really want to do
But it's not up to you. If you're a man and people love you, it's not up to you.
Look, like you said, you have to see what happens. It's fascinating to watch Donald Trump right now because, Donald Trump gets up and says, look, did I need any of this? Like, did I need these problems? Did I need lawsuits in different countries and owing $500 million and all these things and the persecution and the hate and, God forbid, assassination attempts? Did I need this? I could have sat there and just been rich and lived in Mar-a-Lago and do all these things, but he was called to do it. So I am here to serve. And to be honest with you, that's the biggest mistake I made for 40 years of my life. I thought it was all about me. And when you live your life for you, you will be an unhappy, depressed, and maybe alcoholic or drug addicted person because life is not about you. And this is what they don't teach us on MTV, and they don't teach us on TikTok, and they don't teach us in all the movies. They say, oh, what have you done? I want to see you on the private jet. I want to see you with the Bugatti. No, that's not the way it works. We are here to serve. We are all one. And I learned this after 13 years of speaking to over 1,000 people on London Real. Every single one of my greatest guests on London Real, at hour 2 or hour 3 of the conversation, they finish and they say, you know what, Brian, we're all one. I remember the first time I heard it, Dorian Yates, 6-time Mr. Olympia, said it. He said, I know that doesn't make sense, Brian, because you see that guy across the street who's yelling and you say, look at that dude. He's like, I'm not him. Yes, we are. We're all one. And ultimately, we're here to serve. And once you get in that service mindset, man, that's where all the joy, all the happiness, all the purpose happens. And that's why I respect someone like you who's telling these great stories. You're being of service. I'm telling these stories. I'm teaching my students. I'm investing in these companies. It's all about making someone else better. When you do that, man, I'm telling you, this life becomes beautiful. So, look, if I'm called to serve, I'll do it. I'll do it. That's what this is all about. And the problem is that whenever I revert back to it's all about Brian, it's not too far out where the unhappiness comes. So I got to remind myself that every day to be of service. And that's why when this might not be the most convenient thing to do, I'm like, I got to say yes. Let's say yes. And I'm so glad I did it, man. I'm having a great time talking.
I appreciate you. Thank you for coming. You know something that I pick up from you? You don't have an ounce of racism in you. You don't have an ounce of bias on any cultures or nothing. We are all one. And I think you've picked that up from podcasting so much, talking to different people and realizing that. So that's why with that, and from being in every category in society, from rich to bottom, combined, when you go into politics, it's you're going to shoot up. You're going to be a rocket.
Man, that's an interesting observation. Yeah, I don't know. I grew up in a family where it was just not an issue, and we always just treated everybody the same. And now I've just gone all around the world, and met with so many fascinating different types of people, and like everybody is the same, and we are all one. And the problem is, it just takes people some time to figure that out. It's just our job to keep pushing that message, I think.
You've podcasted with so many different people, right? What are some of the personal habits and practices you've adopted as a result of those interviews?
Yeah, look, so I've had some incredible people I've spoken with. The first one that comes to mind is, look, Dan Pena. He's the $1 trillion man. He's the high-performance coach with the castle in Scotland, American, ex-military. He screams a lot. He's like your grandpa that yells at you, and you don't want to hear what he says, but you know he's right.
Yeah.
And he's one of my most popular guests. I both love and hate Dan equally. We're currently not speaking, but that happens every year or two. And so, you know,
It's like a brotherly relationship.
yeah, it's a father-son. Look, me and him are the father-son archetype. That's why people love watching us.
Yeah, okay.
He came to my show 10 years ago. I published his show on Easter Sunday, and he always gets mad at me because he said, Brian, you made me compete with the Lord when you published the show on his day. And he said, you made it hard for me. And so we had a 10-year relationship. It's been amazing. But one of the things Dan taught me was a few things. First of all, affirmations. Every day you need to wake up and verbally out loud speak your affirmations. What's an affirmation? It's one of your goals said as if it's true today. I am privileged and excited to be a billionaire. I'm comfortable in leading a team of 20 people. Now you might not be those things, but you say it every day because the mind is very pliable. It really doesn't necessarily know what reality is, and if you continually drum in it what is true, that will get you to where you want to be, and it really works. These kinds of things, the vision boards, meditation practices are really important to me. The other thing Dan taught me is to engineer risk into my life. Most people listening to this or watching this are not taking enough risk, period. And so if you're not engineering risk into your life, you will not have any wins in your life. And here's the thing, your losses, quote unquote losses, first of all, nobody remembers them. And your losses, even those turn into be wins. And so Dan Pena taught me I wasn't taking enough risk. And so now every year I look out in front of me and I think, how can I take some big risks? Some big, like, whoo, I don't know what's gonna happen here. Like, that's crazy. And I always say, what I wanna do with London Real is I wanna do something next year that I can't even fathom doing. Like, I can't even dream of something we're gonna do. That's where I wanna be, which means you're coming up with these crazy, big, bodacious, once in a generation goals. So I encourage everybody to do that. Look, every day is precious. Like, nobody gets out alive. We don't have that much time. How much time do you have? A day, a week, a month, a year? You've got to go big. You owe it to this beautiful gift of life to go as hard as you can every day, as big as you can every day. Take those risks. What you think is a risk, it's a joke. Most people are so concerned about what people think of them. They care more about people they don't like, right, of what they say about with their lives, who aren't going to help them or care anyways. And you got to just go pull the trigger, as he would say. So that's one of the big things I learned.
Brian, I wish I had more time with you. I wish I had more time with you. Please come back when you're back in Dubai next
I'll be
time.
back in a couple months. We can definitely do it again, man.
Appreciate you.
Yeah, I really
Of course.
enjoyed this, man.
Of course. We're at the airport now. Thank you for everything. Thank you for blessing us today. Thank you for doing that.